motorcycle enthusiast. I mean, I learned how to ride motorcycles when I was 9 years old. I can,
Wow.
yeah,
Did you grow up on a farm? Like, what was it behind learning how to ride a motorbike at
I
9?
was just crazy about two wheels. I couldn't wait to get my first bicycle. And I got
Uh-huh.
my first bicycle when I was probably about 5. Needless to say, I took it for a ride down the road, which I wasn't allowed to do, and it had those training wheels that were really horrible. And I
Uh-huh.
lost control and I went right through the neighbor's plate glass window and I escaped without a scratch.
Unlike their window.
Yeah, I was in big trouble for the window. Don't care about the fact I could have been sliced in half. My father gave me such a belting for that. But my father always had motorcycles and he was always tinkering around with them. And they're my older brothers. I'm the last of 5 kids. Especially my oldest brother he was a real motorhead. And he'd get
Uh-huh.
into the garage and he would strip stuff and put it together and even the lawnmower. He was putting lawnmowers on bicycle frames to try and get bicycles to run. And I was always
How
kind of hovering
funny.
around and I learned, about all this stuff. And then I became a motorcycle enthusiast. And in fact, my father said to me, nope, 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 no, you're the last of 5. You're not getting a motorbike. So at the age of 14, I started working, and every penny that I saved, I went and I bought a motorbike that was written off from the front. Oh no, it wasn't. It had blown a valve. And I took
Uh-huh.
it up the road and I made friends with the garage owner up the road. And him and I worked on this motorcycle. We stripped the head, put a new piston in, had the motor rebored. I had it registered. I got my license and I rode home and parked it in my father's parking spot.
I can tell you're the baby of the family.
Why? What have I given away?
Wow. So do you have a motorbike now?
Yeah, I still do. Absolutely. Give me 2 wheels any day. I would live my life on 2 wheels. Sam, this morning it was 5 o'clock in the morning. I was on a bicycle for 3 hours. So
Wow.
I've got a collection of bicycles. I love cycling, and I've still got a motorbike. So
That is so cool.
yeah.
The things that we learn.
And you're also a motorhead, aren't you?
Yeah, but give it 4 wheels. And I also like to watch other people drive them really fast, not myself.
Really?
I do. I love cars, love driving, but yeah, like, oh, just going to supercars or Grand Prix, whatever it is, just being there at the track. Oh my goodness. I love it. I love it. I love it so
Do you
much.
wear earmuffs? Because the noise would
I
drive me
I
crazy.
I actually wear like the little foam earplugs because
Mm,
I can't I yeah, you're right. I can't handle the noise. It
mm,
just really gets in my head.
mm.
But oh, love it. Yeah, you get that whole feeling in your body when they go past. It's so
You
cool.
feel it in the ground. The whole ground vibrates as it roars past.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when people find that out about me, I'm really surprised to hear that about you, because I know that people were really surprised. I'm blonde. I'm 4'11". I'm very, I love pretty dresses and pink. And when they hear that I love car racing, they're like, "Oh, did not expect that from you at all."
Isn't that amazing? It's like life is a box of chocolates, hey? Every
Uh-huh.
single bite it tastes different. So it's like human
Love
beings.
it.
We all have things that we don't necessarily talk about, but
Yeah.
we have our passions. So
Totally.
besides,
So just thinking about that, I was saying, the look of me or the perception of me, people think doesn't match what I like. That is what we're going to talk about today, Mish. We're going to talk about negotiating price when the value doesn't match.
beautiful. It's a stunning.
See what I did there?
Yes, you flicked it straight in there. You brought it in. Well done, Sam.
So that's what we're going to talk about today because like specifically talking about negotiations
Yeah.
and specifically what happens when the valuation of a commercial property comes in lower than the asking price. And I've heard from you, the expert, that this is a pretty common situation, right?
At the moment, this is happening all over the place, and I don't know what's motivating it or what's driving it. I'm going to reach out here and say my assumption is that the market's busy changing and the lenders are putting the valuers under a little bit of pressure, and those valuers don't want to overvalue a property because the lenders, obviously, lenders, if you think about it, pay 65 or 70%. So realistically, the lender owes the property. Okay, we all puff our chests out and say we own that property, but they're taking the biggest risk, although we've got some skin in the game. So they want to make sure that that property is really, really marketable. Okay, should things change or fall over. And the lenders always know more than what we do, realistically. So we're coming across this quite a lot because obviously vendors they want to get the best possible price, so they're pumping it up. Sometimes they're using, let's just say, skewed information, to bring that price out there. So what do you do? What do you do if the lender is overvaluing the property? It's a bit of a thing. How do you handle that? So that's why we've decided to have this chat today.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
So that question I'm going to throw straight back to you.
Yeah.
What do you do? What is the very first step if you're looking at a deal where the numbers just don't add up? And can I just ask, when you say the numbers don't add up, what numbers exactly are we looking at?
Okay, so we're looking at a wide range of things. We're looking at the property, what the current rental is, what the sales comparison, rental comparisons. There's quite a wide range of things that we'd look at. And realistically, we try to look at what the valuer would look at in the property. Often we would have a conversation with the valuer and ask them, what have they based the valuation on? Valuers base their valuations on different types of things, on different types of criteria. Some of them would work just on a 5-kilometer radius of what's sold or rented in the immediate proximity. But the biggest thing is comparative. So you want to have a look at comparative sales in that 5-kilometer radius, depending on where the property is, what its position is. You might have to go to 10Ks, and depending on the type of asset as well. We sometimes find that we might be doing a retail that there's not a hell of a lot of other retail around there, or a commercial with retail and wholesale sort of aspect to it. So very dependent, and it makes it quite difficult. But the more information you source, the better you have, to see should you lose that tenant, what would the market comparable be? So we do two major comparatives. The one would be comparative sales, and the other one would be comparative rentals. All right. We try and get a clear vision through analysis of what rental rolls are, vacancy rates are, market rents, as I've mentioned. So we try and get a full picture of the financials of that property. And here I'm going to throw up a little red flag. And I think I might have
give us the red flag. This is important.
Yeah. Beep, beep, beep. If you're buying a lease back, very often, in order to sell that property at a slightly higher price, the lessor, which would be your vendor, okay, because he's leasing the property to himself or another entity, but he's effectively has ownership of both. If they try and inflate that rental, you're going to realize that you're buying that property at the highest possible price. The valuer is going to come in, and the valuer is very, very astute. They know this straight away, and they know that lease backs are big red flags. They come in and they just slash that right down. They will find the lowest possible pricing, the lowest possible rentals, and do their gap analysis based on that, or income analysis based on that.
I remember you talking about that in the last episode. So that's obviously such a big thing to look out for now, right?
Absolutely huge, massive. You really want to price yourself at exactly where the valuer is going to see their property. I'll give you a little example, Sam. I love telling stories.
I do. This is good though.
Just recently, we've settled on a property, and the seller was gung-ho about the price, and the agent was gung-ho about the price. And they kept on saying that it's a net rent. And when we drilled down, we were going, okay, and we couldn't really see it too well. But when we drilled down in it, we found out that it wasn't a net rent, it was a gross rent. It was percentage gross. So in the lease, in the fine print, it mentioned that the landlord was required to pay a portion of the outgoings. So this is where you really need to drill down and make sure, you're getting all of those little pieces of information. Anyway, turns out that we had to reduce the price by about 10%. And I took it back to the agent. I had to prove to the agent, number one, that it wasn't price comparative and that she needs to prove it to her vendor.
Mm.
So she had a little bit of a problem on her hand. She managed to get it over the line. We did purchase that property in the end, and it actually worked out, and it came on spot on with the valuation. No,
Mm.
but again, lots of numbers in the background, lots of research to be done in order to substantiate that price reduction.
Yeah, and you don't want to be finding out that awful piece of information too late. Like that's something that would be really uncomfortable when you thought you were going one way, all of a sudden to have this new bit of information
Yep.
that's presented to you and is just potentially having something fall over.
Well, it's difficult because by that stage you're on contract. So
Hmm.
you've paid for contract, you've paid your deposit, you're now semi on the hook, and the valuer comes back and says, this property is
Mm,
worth 10% less. Like, okay, show me how, what have you done? What principles have you used in order to get that valuation adapted to? And what have we done in our due diligence, which is different? So it really is important to have those conversations with valuers upfront
mm,
before you actually get to that stage. A valuer will never tell you what they're going to value the property at before they've done the valuation, because otherwise it's not worth them, spending any time, effort, or energy in it. So they're never going to give you that information, but they will tell you more or less what they think the capitalization rate has shifted to in that area based on maybe work that they've done, properties that they've seen. So that is very important that you are purchasing the property at the same capitalization rate that they're using.
mm. Cool. So once you've got all that data, where do you go next?
Well, you take it straight back to the seller. You've got to take that back to the seller and have that negotiation with them because data doesn't lie. Data
Hmm.
is it's key. It's a realistic report of what's happening today, not 6 months ago. It's what's happening
Hmm.
right now. So you're going to help get the seller, the vendor, to understand where you're coming from, why you're asking for a price reduction. And I think the most important thing is to understand what the seller's motivation is. So, are they under pressure to sell quickly? Is there emotion attached to it? What are they basing their outcome on? Where are they getting their information from? And if you're asking the right questions, you can actually tailor your negotiation to exactly what they want. And I think it's very, very important. Don't ever undermine what information they're giving you or argue, or, you really don't want to get into that position. You want to just have an open conversation, present the data, and realistically, I always say, look, the data doesn't lie. This is what's happening in the market.
Mm,
Where are you getting your information from? Because I will stand to be corrected if your information is actually more accurate than what mine is. Let's compare notes. Let's talk about
mm.
it.
So how do you keep that conversation factual without stepping on people's toes? Because if we're going around bruising egos along the way,
Mm,
that's not going to play in our favor.
mm.
So
It's
can you give us some examples here or some ideas to be able to present our case and keep it all nice?
Absolutely. It's firstly be super respectful, grateful, thankful. Okay. You got to respect where they're coming from, and they're doing a job as well. You know, the vendor's got to a point where he wants to sell the property and you want to buy. So it's eager seller, eager buyer. It's that delicate dance of how you negotiate it. And if you do this incredibly respectfully, they'll respect not only you, but your position and your data a lot more. So it's, really keep it professional, keep your data professional, keep it data driven, present your comparisons, be transparent, be as transparent as possible, be open. You want them to understand very clearly where your analysis is coming from, highlight the risks of overpaying, where the market is going, how that could impact on you down the line, that the valuation doesn't come in line with it. And often what I say to the agents is realistically, if this property is overpriced and it falls over with me, it's going to fall over with the next person and the next person and the next person until the vendor comes to the reality that actually he's just wasting a lot of money having contracts fall over because it costs, you know.
Yeah, totally.
And not only that, it's time sensitive. You know, it could be
Mm-hmm.
wasting a month to 2 months, which means that he's just kicking the can down the road. And it means that it's going to take him longer to sell the property. You know, so really, what is he waiting on? At the risk of your loans being rejected, your return on investment, although he wouldn't really be worried about return on investment, but it's something that you've got to take into consideration, you know.
Of course.
Resell, if you need to resell the property, let's say in 2, 3 years' time, although I must say I hate that because I always say property is a long investment game. You don't want to be selling
Mm.
it quick, quick, quick. And yeah, it's all about showing that you're taking a very grounded perspective in the whole approach,
Mm.
you know.
So it is about going in and about being respectful and grateful and all of the things that you just talked about.
Mm.
But it's not always going to go perfectly because there's still so much like emotion in these sort of situations. So what happens if the seller just still won't budge on the price?
Well, a couple of things. Firstly, you've got to get into the seller's head. You've got to find what is motivating the seller. Does he not want to sell because he's got his 5 dead dogs in the property that he doesn't want to leave the property because his 5 dead dogs are there? Is there an emotional attachment to it? Does he not want to sell because he needs $100,000 more for his
Mm,
requirements? So, what are his requirements? You need to find out. And the best thing at this stage is to ask the agent if you can have a three-way conversation with them, you know, so that you can ask these questions and say, you know, what is important to you? Because
mm-hmm,
sometimes it's not the price, sometimes it
mm,
could be the terms. You know, you might be able to negotiate terms creatively, you know, come up with some creative suggestions where you can do a price adjustment based on your evidence. Or if they've got a fixed price in their mind, you want to know why and where it comes from. Maybe you can ask for concessions, maybe like a longer due diligence, or maybe the seller does more repairs or paint, or he basically spends that money that you would. So it's kind of even Steven at the end of the day. There's a number of different ways to purchase as well. You could maybe negotiate vendor finance. So if it's a property that he's owned for 20, 30 years, he's pretty cashed up. Offer him a higher interest rate so that he
mm-hmm,
stays in the property, do vendor finance with him. So instead of having the bank finance it at 6%, I'm just using a number there, offer
mm-hmm,
him 10%. And he
mm,
stays in the deal, you pay him 10% for a period of time, and then include some sort of contingency clauses. And you want to do this on the contract.
mm.
And most certainly, it has to be a legal binding negotiation where you can reach that final valuation and come to some sort of agreement. So there are many ways to negotiate this issue.
Mm,
Don't just walk away from it. That's the bottom line.
mm. I really love that. And I don't know if you see this, and I'm not talking specifically about commercial property here. I'm talking about any deal.
Yeah.
So many people don't think outside the box. One of the businesses that I bought quite a few years ago now, I did by vendor finance by specifically asking that question. The buyer really wanted us in because we were really well known in the industry. And for them, they just wanted that nice feeling that they knew that we were going to carry on the business.
Mm.
The price, I just went, just can't do it, and asked, what's important to you? And it turned out that the vendor's husband was quite ill and they just needed to know that they had money in the bank every week. So we vendor financed and made sure that they had it in. But if I didn't ask the question, we never would have got that over the line. So whilst it's not commercial property, it's the same thing. It's just by asking what's most important to you now? What do you actually need? How can we work together
Yeah.
to make that happen?
Yeah. That is gold, Sam. That is absolute gold. And we see this so often in commercial where people have run their businesses for the last 30 years and one of them are getting ill and they want out. So, it's knowing what questions to ask and when to ask those questions. And then just, yeah, at the end of the day, everybody is a human being. They have human
Yep.
needs. You really want to find out what is their human needs, so that you can
Mm-hmm.
negotiate around that and see if you can come to some sort of compromise. Really.
Totally. And these days it's really nice to be heard. To have someone ask the question and actually listen, that just I feel like that just softens all walls, if that makes sense. But
Completely.
it's not going to happen every time. So if none of this works, what we've been talking
Yeah.
about, do you just walk away?
Look, if it gets impossible, if you can see that you're hitting a brick wall and it's just totally impossible and you're not getting anywhere, if you try and engage with them and they are just dead set, nope, or if they just don't want to speak to you, because sometimes the vendor just doesn't want to speak to you. I had a case the other day where we were negotiating and getting closer and that, and I said to the guy, let's meet. And he just said, no, I don't do face to face. And I thought, okay, I can respect that
Hmm?
because I said, let's do a Zoom. And he said, no, we don't do face to face. And you need to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody just sticks their heels in and you run your numbers and it's just not stacking up, if you can see that this property is just not stacking up. In fact, we had one about a month ago where the property actually went to auction and it went up 700,000. It was a $4 million property, went up 700,000 over what they were asking.
Wow.
Turns out that the seller decided at the end of all of that he didn't want to sell the property. So he let it run
No.
and run and run. And I think the agents were obviously, behind it in a big way, but it never got to 700. He moved his price from 3.1 million, no, sorry, 4.1 million to 7 million when he saw what was happening at the auction. And then when we went back afterwards, because obviously we didn't get there, when we went back afterwards, he just said, nope, they're taking the property off the market. And I was like, seriously?
How random.
Yeah, but this happens, you see. It happens
Mm,
where I think previously he didn't realize what he had. Having gone through that experience, I feel as if he probably learned quite a lot through the experience and then decided actually
mm-hmm.
it's a pretty good property.
Mm,
Personally, I think
mm,
he's making a
mm.
mistake, but anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Because he
Right.
wanted to buy that property. So look, there are a couple of creative options. You can offer them an option, which is a commercial option where it's an arrangement that a tenant basically is similar to what you did, that the tenant leases the property and you negotiate a price down the line at a particular time and you both move towards achieving that goal. Okay. And
Mm,
again, it's
mm,
a standard contract, but it's an option contract,
mm.
lease to own, something like that.
Love it. So, what are your, I guess, your final tips or like a summary so that we can sort of finish this and put this episode in a nice box with a bow on it? What are the final things that you want to leave us with to help seal the deal?
I'm huge in communication. So I believe
Mm-hmm.
communicate, 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 collaboration. Don't ever be combative. So don't ever go into challenge or start challenging them or arguing because the minute you go there, you've lost the deal, you've lost the plot. So your aim is to solve the problem, don't go to war, and use deadlines, so that you both know that you've got until a certain period where you want to get through this, that there's a sense of urgency. And in a hot market, you don't want to say that you're looking at other options because then they'll just say, well, good for you, cheers, bye-bye. But if the
Mm,
market's not hot, you can say, look, there is a little bit of urgency on it. I do have one or two other properties that I need to go ahead with. I do like your property, would be my first option. However, I need to make a decision within the next 24 hours or 48 hours. And so long as you're being collaborative and communicative, generally, you should be able to find some sort of space that is agreeable to both.
mm, mm. Yeah, I guess by keeping that communication open, there could be a light shining that there might be something that you missed along the way as well?
Often. Now, I was just chatting to one of my clients this morning about a property, and I said to him, just because they've turned it down doesn't mean it's closed.
Mm.
So I always like to leave that back door open, and I always go back to them and I say, look, if anything happens, can I be the first one that you come back to? All right. So if anything changes, can I be the first one that you come back to? And really be very respectful about how you do that. There might be something, and we always go back and we have a look at the property and we look at possibilities. Usually we drill down pretty deep the first time round, but we look to see whether there's maybe opportunities that we've missed in the property that somebody else has seen that we haven't seen. You want to look at location, maybe, is it worth hanging on to it? Is there long-term upside? Is it strong? And often what I say to my clients is, you take a property like that, which is an A grade property in prime position, pay the extra. Now, as a buyer, you always think overpaying it. Oh, I always feel like I'm overpaying it. I can tell you,
Right?
yeah, but think back to when your parents bought property. When you bought property, you think back to hell. Had I not paid that property, I had a client. It was about a year or so ago. We presented them with a property and they were sitting on the fence. They eventually didn't go ahead with it. One of my other clients jumped in and went ahead with it. 8 months later, their property went up by $400,000.
Yeah.
So,
Uh-huh.
you always have this feeling when you're buying, you always think that you're overpaying. But realistically, show me anywhere in the world. No, I've got to be careful about that because in some countries that have been bombed and whatever, I'm talking about
Yeah.
in a reasonable market, in a reasonable market where the property has actually gone backwards.
Mm.
Even in my country, in South Africa, I was busy selling off my entire portfolio. I had 29 properties, Sam, that I had to sell off to move to Australia to afford to move here. It ripped me apart. And I look at those properties today, and in fact, one of my very best friends said, Mishy, don't sell those properties. Keep them. And I said, no, I need the money in Australia. I need it to be in a first world currency. I could see what was happening in the current. Those properties are worth twice as much in a country like
Mm.
South Africa where it's like, war zone
Mm.
deluxe. So
Mm.
the long and the short is sometimes you feel as if you're paying a little bit extra. Sometimes it's worth it. I'll pay an extra 5% just to knock the others out and to get the property that I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's worth paying.
Love that.
Yeah.
And yes, I know there was a property I was looking at 10 years ago, and I just looked and I went, that much? I'm not paying that much. And then the friend who had presented it to me just recently went, check out the price of this property you were looking at. I'm not going to tell you. Let me just say, I cried.
Well, that's exactly what
Yes,
happens. I
exactly.
often look at that. I look at my
Exactly.
properties in South Africa of what their values are, and then I look at my properties in Australia, and then I do the comparison. And it's like beating yourself up. But some properties over there have done a little better. I'm still happy with what the Australian market has presented. And hands down, I would do it all over again, and I would still buy property in Australia because we've got a first world currency. It's just a whole different scenario. So I'm still buying properties and I'll continue to do that. Somebody asked me again this week, is it still a good time to buy properties? I said, so long as I'm breathing, it's a good time to buy properties.
Oh, I like it. I like it. So what I'm hearing lots of things, stay informed, be respectful in your negotiations. But I think that my biggest takeaway from everything you've talked about is that you need to have a plan when you're going through your negotiations so that things aren't missed, that you're making sure that you're paying attention to the right data and you're not just playing by accidenti.
Absolutely. I mean, it's be kind, be courteous, be negotiable, but at the same time, be firm, allow for flexibility, and make sure that you're backing everything with facts. Because if you're just
Mm,
making blanket statements, you're going to look like an idiot. So, really
mm,
back everything with facts and find the gaps. Make sure that at the end of the day, this is a win-win and not a win-lose, because the minute your vendor feels as if you are rubber arming and trying to look for, advantage over them, you're out of the game.
Yep.
Give back whatever you. I always say when you're doing a negotiation, leave some meat on the bone. Always, when you're buying and when you're selling, particularly when you're selling. But when you're buying, always leave something on the table, something that makes them feel good about this is a great deal.
So important. I love that so much.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about due diligence. Oh my goodness, I always struggle to say this, Mish.
DD.
Due diligence. DD, let's go with that. I know that you've written a book, Unlock the Secrets of Commercial Property Due Diligence.
You got it right, Sam.
We will thank you. We'll put the link for that right below. And I believe that you've got a secret code to get the book for free.
That's right. So if you jump on the website, you can see that. We'll put it in the show notes. So if you hop onto the podcast, there's a little code in there, and you can use that code, and you'll get that book absolutely free. We do have quite a couple of freebies. If you go to the website, there's the Secret Due Diligence, the little exclusive book. We've also got something that I don't often talk about, but people love it, which is the VIP list. Now, the VIP list is a selection of properties that I select for whatever reason, and I like those properties. If we're not using them or whatever, I'll just pop them into a list, and you can become a VIP member by just clicking that button and receive those properties. Boom, to your door, into your mailbox. So
very nice.
Just a couple of little freebies there. Yeah, and if you want to chat further, book a call.
Absolutely. You can do all of that at revolvecommercial.com.au. Mish, thanks for taking us through that today. I think that there was a lot to learn. I learned a lot today and some really actionable tips. And if, like me, you are enjoying these episodes, we would love you to give us a 5-star rating on whatever podcast app you are listening to right now. Give us 5 stars and a little comment, because this really helps us to spread the news and the education, and to let other people know that this podcast is worth listening to. So we would really appreciate that.
Thank you again for hosting this fabulous pod. I always love speaking to you.
I actually feel like, what I was just thinking, a lot of people love Beauty and the Geek, because it's the opposites. And I kind of feel like that's almost like we are, like the expert and the dummy in commercial real estate. So I hope that people get some value from some of my sometimes really silly questions. But I think what it does is help us to learn more and to get into your head a little bit. So thanks, Mish.
Absolutely. And Sam, just remember there's never a dumb question, because
love it.
If you're asking it,
I'll keep asking them then.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Okay, see you next time. Thanks.